All right. Hey, everybody, we are live. Just checking my audio levels here. I want to make sure everybody's happy with those. We get a lot of people that are unhappy with the audio levels. So I'm going to turn this up just a little bit. Turn it up to 11. Make the audio levels a little higher there. Okay. How's it going? I am still in Armenia. We're going to be leaving shortly and heading over to Jordan, getting back into the region over there. And one tired Mama Rissa is on, so we see her there, and she will smite you if you start getting skippy in the chat box. I think my wife is on there too, so we got we got two Iron Maidens on that will take care of any trolls we got in the chat, so thank you for that. We're going to talk about quick updates on Israel. This has actually kind of been a slow news day for Israel. There's always a lot going on, but there's less today than we've had in recent days, and that's a good thing. But before I get to Israel, I just want to mention something. Yesterday, I did a live on my website, my locals page, chuckholton.com will take you over there. And it was about a different kind of topic. It's a topic that I've been asked to speak about because I have spent 20 years in non-permissive environments, and I do some consulting for security purposes on the side. While I'm talking here, we've got Shofar, we've got the Shofar app is going off. We got rockets coming in to right around Jish again, man. Jish has been getting hit a lot lately over here in Dalton. You see here, so there's Kiryat Shimona up there and Nahariya. So while we're speaking, there are air raid sirens going off in all of these areas, just a few miles from the border. It was pretty quiet overnight. I think they went 18 hours without any rocket fire, and that's a record in recent history. But right now you can see they're still coming. We're going to talk more about all of that in just a minute, but let me get back to what I was saying about I do the security consulting on the side for high net worth individuals and even the State Department and other corporations and things like that, Amazon.com. So once in a while, I will pick up a contract to do that. And so surviving in non-permissive environments has been sort of a theme of my life for the last couple of decades. And so people have been asking me about, what kind of preparations they should be making for potential for unrest in the wake of the upcoming elections. And so yesterday I made a 1 hour live that goes along with a book I'm actually working on, and it talked about human terrain mapping as a strategy for prepping and survival in a grid down or a failure of civility. So it was super popular, even though I did it on locals. I didn't do it on YouTube. And we've had thousands of people that have watched it already. Just say all that to say this, two things. Number one, I made a kind of condensed version of it, and I put it up on YouTube today, just a little while ago. So after this live, you can go over there and watch that video if you're interested in how to prepare to be more survivable after the upcoming presidential elections in the United States, which we all know will be quite contentious and possibly worse. So you can go watch that here on YouTube. Also, if you want a copy of the PDF that goes along with it, that's basically my notes that I'm working on for this upcoming book, you can go to chuckholton.com, my locals page. You have to sign up and you have to become a supporter. It's only for paid supporters, but $7 a month or one time, donation, and you can get access to the printed copy of that. You're welcome to print it off, share it with your friends, whatever you like, because we want to help people with concrete ways to be safer in the times to come, which probably are going to get pretty sporting, I would say. Okay? All right, so let's go on. We're sitting here watching these rocket attacks happening in Israel. If you go back here, just 2 hours ago, we saw, let's see if it'll come up. Maybe it won't come up. Okay. I don't know why it's not coming up. Anyway, there was an attack 2 hours ago. There was an attack 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago, 7 hours ago, and then 20 hours ago from Gaza. And that's the first time we've seen a rocket fly out of Gaza in quite some time. I mentioned yesterday that they put up a video already of them hauling this rocket into one of the tents in the safe zone in Gaza, setting it up on a wooden platform because their launchers have all been blown up. And then they've got a level out there. They're trying to get it just right and then firing it off out of the safe zone from a tent. Again, as usual, using civilians as human shields, and they care nothing about any kind of civilian casualties. They like to cry and whine and complain, but in reality, they are just giddy every time that they have civilian casualties in Gaza because it's the only weapon that they have left, okay? There was a suicide drone attack, a unmanned aerial vehicle, 3 of them that came into the coastal city of Eilat. Okay, so we'll go to the map here and we'll go down to Eilat so you can see that. Eilat is right there. I spent my birthday in Eilat this year. That's a nice town, very hot though. And they had 3 unmanned aerial vehicles come in there that they say came from Iraq. So if you back up here, they had to fly from clear up here and had to fly down across Jordan and Saudi Arabia in order to get there. And they didn't get shot down until, well, one of them got shot down. One of them struck the port area, which is already empty. I mean, the port has gone bankrupt because of the Houthi craziness that's gone on down there. So there's basically nothing happening at the port. So one of them struck the port, didn't really damage much of anything. I think just put a small crater in a parking lot or something. And they said the third one they lost. They didn't know where it went. So it probably just overshot Eilat, went out in the desert and buried itself in the sand somewhere out there. So no injuries there, but it is significant that that came all the way from Iraq. Now, something else that happened in Iraq that you're not hearing much about in the news, and that is another attack on U.S. forces not in Iraq, they were in Syria. But this one of those Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria. There have been more than 170 attacks on U.S. forces since October 7th in the region. And there have been, as you probably remember, 3 deaths in Jordan on that Tower 3 strike that happened. But this time, no word on injuries or anything. They really don't like to get reported on, partially because the troops that are in Syria are all special operations guys, and they don't like much media attention anyway. These happen to be Rangers. I just happen to know that because I've been to the base. It's no secret, but they still don't like to, I mean, just by definition, these guys don't like to have a lot of media attention. But if we go up here into Syria, just to show you where this is. So the Euphrates River is right here, and it comes down from Syria into Iraq. And this is Deir ez-Zor right there. And this is where the military base is that was the U.S. military base. It's very small, forward operating base. I wouldn't say how many troops we've got there or anything, but they're not many. And that is a very hot area because there's a lot of remnants of the Islamic State that are roaming around that area. A lot of guys that had belonged to the Islamic State and then decided not to belong to the Islamic State once the IS, started to get whacked all over the place. And so, Raqqa was the Islamic State's capital when they had their quote unquote caliphate, right? And when they got pushed out of Raqqa in 2017 and they fought just kind of a retreating action all the way down the Euphrates River, and their last stand came at Deir ez-Zor. Now, there's an island in the river right here. You see that island? Actually, it was this island right here. They had about 30,000. Wait, is it that island? Muslim? No, I think it might be this island down here. Anyway, it's one of these islands in the Euphrates. They had about 30,000 people, about 8,000 of which were Islamic State, and the rest were civilians, both willing and unwilling. I say that because some of the civilians were the families of the Islamic State fighters. And they were crammed into this island. There's nothing really on the island. They had a bunch of vehicles out there. And they were, so it must have been this island up here, I guess, if they had vehicles out there. I don't remember exactly which island it was, but I was there. It might have been this one here. But anyhow, I don't remember. Anyway, they were just getting pounded by the Syrian army and the Russians who were down here over on the southwest side of the island. And then the Kurds were over here on the east side. And everybody that was escaping wanted to escape onto the east side, because if they went west, they'd all get killed. So they moved over to the west, to the east side, came into our our little casualty collection points out there. And in that one mission that when I was there, was that 2017, I guess, 2017, the Free Burma Rangers treated 40,000 people in a matter of like 2 months. A lot of wounded coming out of there. It was ugly. So the United States left some troops there to keep a lid on the IS, dash bad guys. Hi. And that's what they've been doing for years now. They've been at that base, and they do missions out of there when they get some intel that there are some, bad guys out there. They'll go and whack them. It's like a ongoing game of whack-a-mole, but it presents a target for these Iranian-backed militias. And that's one of the reasons why they have several times said that they're going to pull everybody out of there, and they just never have, because pulling everybody out of there would mean basically abandoning our allies, the Kurds. And not that we haven't done that multiple times before, but it's still a bad look. And there are, every time we say we're going to pull out, the Kurds say, well, then we'll just release the 10,000 IS prisoners that we've got, that we've been taking care of for the last several years. And we'll just let them go, because we can't take care of all those guys without help from the United States. And then the U.S. says, well, I guess we'll leave our guys there. So you're not hearing about all the attacks on U.S. troops in this region. And it's just pretty disgusting that Kamala Harris actually, like with a straight face, said in the debate with Donald Trump that we don't have any U.S. troops in combat, because those hundreds of Army Rangers and Special Operations guys that are in Iraq and Syria would beg to differ. Those guys are going to combat all the time. Pretty disgusting that she would say that. I doubt that she doesn't know I think that that's just a talking point that she just figures that the rest of you don't know. And so she can get away with lying about it. And it was unfortunate that Donald Trump didn't call her out on it right then. And he could have just hammered her. But I don't think Donald Trump knows that much about where our troops are and what they're doing either. He trusts that to other people. And if he had a little better handle on the geopolitics, he could have really crushed in that debate. Okay? Yeah, I agree with you, one tired mama. Okay, so let's move on to further news here in Israel. I would love to travel to the Middle East someday to see map time in real life. Come on, Eric, let's do it. Come on over. So here's something else that's Benjamin Netanyahu said to file under the category of, quote, this can only happen at the UN International Criminal Court. The ICC prosecutor met yesterday with two great champions of human rights, the Turkish president, his name is Erdogan, who is known around the world for slaughtering Turkish civilians, for putting journalists like me in jail. His troops killed a friend of mine on one of our recent trips to Syria by dropping a drone bomb on him. And so, yeah, a great, champion of human rights met with the ICC prosecutor and with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, who is a Holocaust denier and loves to pay tangos, bad guys, just to do bad things to Jews. Rather than issuing arrest warrants for those two guys, who definitely would qualify under International Criminal Court rules for an arrest warrant if the world were a just place, rather than issuing arrest warrants for those guys, the prosecutor is just obsessed at pretending that Israel's democratically elected leaders are the real war criminals here. And just because they are trying to protect their people and defend their country, apparently that makes them, war criminals. And so he's meeting with two actual war criminals to try to find ways to cast Benjamin Netanyahu as one. And that is just perfect for the United Nations. That tells you everything you need to know about how worthless the UN is right there. Speaking of worthless, here's a question. What do you think will come out of Bibi's trip to New York? Both sides are going to try to use it as a campaign, something to campaign on. There's going to be a lot of protests around his visit. There have already been some Democratic lawmakers that said they're going to walk out and they're not going to listen to him if he gives a speech and that sort of thing. But not much. Thoughts on the UN's pact for the future? I think you could more rightly call it the UN's pact for the Antichrist, but that's just me. Anyway, speaking of useless entities, the United States Biden administration has been pushing Israel to declare a 21-day ceasefire in the north, in Lebanon. And they didn't just say, hey, Israel, how about we, let's talk about a ceasefire. How about we come together at the negotiating table and talk to Hassan Nasrallah and see if we can get everybody to agree to a ceasefire. No, that's not what they did. They just declared a ceasefire. The United States just tried today they just came out, they just announced that there would be a ceasefire, 21-day ceasefire, so that they could allow non-citizens to evacuate from Lebanon. And Israel was like, wait, what? No, we're not having a ceasefire. And Hassan Nasrallah was like, oh, heck no. no ceasefire from us. So neither of the belligerent parties are on board with this. Sounds a lot like the ceasefire proposals that Biden was making for Gaza, which went nowhere. These 21-day ceasefire was meant, like I said, to allow non-citizens to evacuate. Well, they've been calling on non-citizens to evacuate for months. And so if they're not gone by now, they probably don't want to leave. And if they do want to leave and they didn't by now, that's on them. Like what? I don't understand. Look, you could see this coming a mile away. It's no surprise that Hezbollah and Israel are about to go toe-to-toe on the ground in Lebanon. That's no surprise. So unless you got your head in the sand and you've been spending way too much time on TikTok, you would be crazy if you wanted to leave Lebanon not to have already left. But the United States is saying, nope, we have to have a 21-day ceasefire, which they would definitely push for a permanent ceasefire. This is Anthony Blinken's lame way of saying that they are working around the clock to de-escalate the situation. What they're doing is absolutely worthless. They're not de-escalating anything. They're over there chattering like a monkey, and neither of the belligerent parties are paying any attention to them because they're making about as much sense as a monkey. This is the feckless nature of the Biden administration's foreign policy just makes my head want to explode. It's just unbelievable. So, like I say, neither of those have said that they are willing for a ceasefire. On top of that, all of the major nations like the United States, the UK, and France, and other nations are sending troops over to Cyprus so that they can evacuate their civilians if it comes down to it. Which it's like, why aren't you doing it right now? You can see this coming. Why are you waiting until there's a full-on conflict on the ground in Lebanon to get people out? Okay, hello. This was surprising to me. I looked up today. I wondered how many Americans could there be in Lebanon. I've been to Lebanon a couple of times, and it's a nice place in areas. They've got some very beautiful nature in Lebanon, and the hidden rocket bases in the mountains notwithstanding, there's some beautiful places in Lebanon. Beautiful people in Lebanon, nice beaches. You can go parasailing at the coast in Beirut. So there are some nice places there, but how many Americans are actually, choosing that as a retirement destination? Like, yeah, you know where I'm going to take my Social Security and move to Lebanon. That's where I want to go. Well, there's actually 86,000 American citizens living in Lebanon. That's about as many as there are living in Panama. That's mind-boggling. Now, I think the reason for that is that these are not, regular old Americans who just are looking for a place to retire and have decided to move to Lebanon. These are Lebanese Americans. They're people with dual citizenship. But since they have American citizenship, they enjoy the rights and privileges of American citizens when they're overseas. And that means that the United States is responsible to help them if they get in a jam. And if you look back at the last war in 2006, the U.S. Marines had to go in there and evacuate about 15,000 American citizens after the war started. Now, that was a very short, very intense war. That one was 34 days long. And there's something interesting about that war that you ought to know because it can inform our understanding of what will likely happen in this war that's about to start, or it has started. It's just they haven't gone in on the ground yet. The 2006 war, who do you think started that? Who was the initial party that attacked first? Anybody Any idea? Yeah, it was Hezbollah. They attacked by going into Israel across the border, and they took out several IDF soldiers, captured a few, and wounded some other people. And that, among other things, was kind of the catalyst for the beginning of the 2006, the Second Lebanon War. And at the end of that war, 34 days later, there were 1,000 dead Lebanese. And so they definitely got the worst end of that stick. So this is a theme that we see over and over and over again. You'd think that these organizations would learn that in virtually every case, Israel gets attacked by somebody else, then Israel rises up to defend itself, and by the time it's over, Israel wins, and the attacker that started the thing ends up with massive losses. We've seen that from Hamas. It's absolutely horrific what Hamas did on October 7th, but the losses that have been seen inside Gaza have been orders of magnitude worse. I put up a video on chuckholton.com today. Again, there are lots of videos that I get that I can't show you on YouTube for one reason or another. And so I put them up over on chuckholton.com. You can go subscribe for free and see those videos. Sometimes, if it's really graphic, I'll make it supporter only, but most of the time they're free. And the one that I'm talking about now, you can see for free over there. And it's a drone shot of a giant Israeli flag that they put up on one of the few buildings left standing in Rafah, down in southern Gaza. And as the drone just pans around this flag, you can see that Rafah is just decimated. I mean, it's just one giant pile of rubble. And that's really unfortunate for the people who, were living there. That's really bad for them, and I legitimately feel sorry for the innocent people who have lost their homes because of the actions of Hamas. But elections have consequences. Those people were voted in, and probably not fairly, but whatever. And here's why it's hard to feel too bad for what's happened in Gaza, because there are still a whole bunch of hostages being held there. And so every time I hear people complaining about the casualties and the destruction and everything in Gaza, I just want to say, have you tried releasing the hostages? I mean, that would be an idea. Maybe things wouldn't get wrecked so bad if you'd let the hostages go. You bunch of morons. Okay, so the greatest story you never heard read, Tree of Life, decoded book. Okay, yeah, I don't understand why people do that. Unfortunately for the people who live in Lebanon, many of whom are Christians, it's likely, hey, dobry wieczór. That's my buddy. I went hiking with him this morning. 8 o'clock this morning, I was out here bright and early, and we went up and went hiking up the mountain. He's in his mid-60s. He's my son's landlord, and he doesn't speak English, and I don't speak Armenian, but we both speak a little bit of Russian, and I have my phone, so we had a great time. It was a wonderful time hiking up the mountain and doing a little exercise, and then we went and harvested some wild walnuts and some berries that I have no idea what they were, but I had to eat a bunch of them. And we just had a great time. I love having a chance to just get into the everyday life of people in the places that I go. And not just sort of skimming off the top like a tourist, but actually, living among them, seeing their patterns of life. And man, you learn so much about people and about yourself that way. It was really a good time to do this. I appreciate him. We had barbecue with him last night. He invited us over for dinner and fed us a whole bunch of wonderful food, and far too much of his homemade vodka that I really should not have even touched, because that stuff's strong. Question, how's the baby? She is getting big. Hey, you want to bring the baby out here, Rubina? Maybe Nathan can bring the baby out real quick and we'll show you the baby. Anyway, so going back to this, just say all that about Gaza to say that it's unfortunate what is about to happen to the homes of the people who live in southern Lebanon. Again, it's sort of hard to feel bad because they're not going to go in and just randomly destroy homes. They're destroying the homes that have military infrastructure in them. So they have weapons, they have missiles, they have things like that. Here comes my baby. We have been enjoying this, sweetheart, so much. Look at this. Come here, Sugar Pie. Oh, yeah, there she is. Look at her. Is that not the cutest baby you've ever seen in your whole life? Huh? How you doing? Do you see Grandpa? Who's that? Who's that? Yeah. Isn't she precious? Yeah. This is my little grandbaby Aurora, 7 months. Yeah, 7 months old. And she's not only the prettiest, but she's the smartest baby too. Yeah. Aren't you? You see Grandpa? Yeah, okay. All right. Now that we made the chat explode. So yeah, it is sad what is about to happen to southern Lebanon, but it's basically just has to happen. I mean, these guys, a lot of the Israeli leadership is saying this is something that has to be done. There's not going to be any, there's not going to be any ceasefire until the 60,000 Israeli citizens who have been evacuated from their homes in the north for 11 months now, 11 and a half months, until they go home, we're not even talking about a ceasefire. And, like I say, Nasrallah says, well, until there's a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, there's not going to be one in Lebanon. So don't expect to see a ceasefire there anytime soon, whatever our doddering president says notwithstanding. Okay, so we've got several hundred U.S. troops now deployed to the region, looking to be there to start evacuating some of the 86,000 American citizens who are in Lebanon, and we'll see how that goes. All right. Now, let's go over to, we talked about the red alerts. Okay. So apparently there is quite a bit of anger in Lebanon against Hezbollah. There's a lot of citizens there who are blaming Hezbollah for what's happened to them already, for all the bombings and everything. And as you know, Hezbollah is now a political party, not just a terror group in Lebanon, and they have to worry about not getting voted for. And so they're getting kind of pressured from their citizens as well as from Israel, and they are begging and whining and crying to Iran for help. And they're trying very hard to get Iran to attack Israel right now. And Iran is sort of saying, yeah, we're right there. We're right behind you. We're right there. You go ahead and you fight. We'll be there. That's kind of what's happening, because now, and this is interesting too. Here in Armenia, there are a lot of Iranians, and I have been talking to a lot of them, and you know what they're telling me is, they're telling me, look, Iran can't afford to go to war with Israel. That the economy is so bad in Iran right now, and the Ayatollahs the Ayatollah is just lost so much credibility and clout, and nobody wants to listen to them. And there's all this upheaval and unrest that he can't afford to actually get into a real shooting war with Israel. And so it's interesting to hear that from people who are just coming across the border from Iran, and they're saying, what? No, Israel. And the other thing is, these Iranians that we're talking to here in Armenia, they support Israel. They don't support Iran in this. And so, you have to be careful not to paint with too broad a brush when you talk about Iran being an evil country or anything like that. The country isn't evil, just the leadership. And we know a lot about what that's like here in the United States. Hezbollah has been begging Iran to get involved, and Iran has been paying lip service to Hezbollah, but so far has not done anything. The United States says that their biggest concern is that Iran would get involved, and then, there'd be a wider regional war at that point. Okay, would everyone say a prayer for those in the path of Hurricane Helene? Yeah, we'll do that at the end, Denise, certainly. Do you think the Lebanon military will join the war when Israel moves ground forces into Lebanon? If so, what side? They have said, Robert, that they will join the fighting and on the side of Hezbollah. They will join to defend their country against Israel. And like I have said over and over again, about half of the Lebanese army is Hezbollah. I mean, they're one and the same. They moonlight as Hezbollah. So a lot of the craziness is now we have, according to the United States, two of our, if that happens, we have two of our allies that are going to be going against each other, because the United States gives $300 million a year to the Lebanese army in the form of military equipment. So if you're in Lebanon, you can see American Humvees driving around with Lebanese army soldiers in them. We train their military, and we're giving stuff to Israel. And so here we go again, supporting and paying for both sides of a war. We did that in Afghanistan as well. Just absolutely makes you want to set your hair on fire. Question, why doesn't Israel just say no enforcement of 1701, completely no peace? That's kind of what they're saying. They are kind of saying that we are going to enforce 1701 ourselves, since the absolutely worthless as teats on a boar hog, as they say, group called UNIFIL is not doing it. That's their job. That's why they were founded. That's the whole point of UNIFIL, is to enforce 1701, and they're not doing it at all. And so Israel's saying to its soldiers that are up on the northern border, prepare to enter Lebanon. We're going to go enforce it ourselves. And look, at this point, it's all but a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen. There will be a ground invasion in the very near future. Okay, so let's see here. Other questions? Let's see here. I thought I saw another one go flying by. How does war financially benefit countries? Well, Miss Debbie, war usually doesn't financially benefit the country that is fighting, but it financially benefits other countries like the United States because of the military-industrial complex. So that's a term for a whole bunch of companies who benefit from war. So here, give you an example. Most of the money that the United States is earmarking for Ukraine doesn't go to Ukraine. Doesn't actually go to Ukraine. It goes to American companies that are producing weapons and ammunition and things like that, that then gets sent to Ukraine. And in a very insidious way, this is one method that the government and the administration in power takes money from its citizens and uses it to buy votes. And you would say, wait a minute, how are we buying votes if we're giving stuff to Ukraine? Well, we know that the United States has spent a couple $100 billion total on the war in Ukraine over the last 3.5 years, or whatever it's been. Okay? So that's hundreds of billions of dollars. But the majority of that money has not gone to Ukraine. It has been used to buy things in the United States and then give those things to Ukraine. In so doing, the Biden administration is actually creating jobs, okay, with your tax dollars. They're taking your tax dollars and they're giving it to their cronies in the military-industrial complex. And then those guys have to ramp up production. You just saw Zelensky the other day in the United States. He went to a plant, I think it was like Springfield, Ohio or someplace, where they're cranking out artillery shells as fast as they can. And they're sending those artillery shells over to Ukraine. Well, the money for those artillery shells comes from the United States, but it's getting spent in the United States. And in so doing, it's creating jobs. But it's kind of a false job creation scheme. It's kind of a big Ponzi scheme. And in this way, the Biden administration can say, we've created hundreds of thousands of jobs in the last 4 years. Yes, by stealing money from Americans and using it to pay for things that you're then giving away to another country. It's a scam. It's a scam. And that doesn't mean that Ukraine shouldn't get any support. I personally think that it's a pretty good bargain for us right now to be dramatically degrading Russia's military capabilities to the point that they will basically never again be a military threat to the United States. I mean, they don't have enough young men. They're not having babies. And so they're not going to be able to replace the 500,000 young men that have been wiped out in this war. They're just not going to be able to replace them. And so this is a sort of cynical way of degrading your enemies by not being willing to put your own boys and girls at risk. So how many American troops have died in the war in Ukraine? 0, none. And so to spend 0 American lives and, a very small fraction of the U.S. military annual budget to completely decimate the Russian military, it's not a bad bargain. But the way they're doing it, they're doing it in a way that allows them to say that they created jobs in the United States. And if you ask me, that's probably the only reason that they're doing it at all. That's probably the only reason that they're supporting Ukraine at all, because the Biden administration really doesn't care anything about Ukraine. They could care less about Ukrainians. The Ukraine doesn't have anything to offer the United States in terms of resources, but it's one of those things that I kind of see as doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. Okay. But I'm going to do a whole live about Ukraine, and we can talk specifically about that. I know that's a very hot button issue, but we can talk about that more later. Okay. Come to Oregon as a non-American, you qualify for $30,000. That's insane, one tired mom. I cannot believe that. How do they even get away with that? How are they not getting that challenged in court? Donna Nasson says, what about Israel? What about Israel? I must have missed the first half of that question or statement, whatever. Why is Zelensky cuddling up to Democrats and trashing Trump Vance? Because he doesn't understand American politics. Zelensky has consistently misunderstood American politics very badly, and he has really stepped in it a lot when it comes to, what to do. Zelensky's not a liberal. I mean, I know I've met him a couple times. I have gotten to be friends with some people who are his, immediate assistants. And I'll tell you, he's not a liberal. He is doing his best to help his country survive. And so he's cozying up to the people that are pledging to support him. So you can understand why he would do that. You could also understand why he doesn't care anything about American politics in terms of, who wins or who loses. He just wants to get the support that he needs to try to win this war. What he doesn't understand is that if he was if he had been a little smarter and played his cards a little better, he probably could have gotten the support of Donald Trump. And if Trump were to win, then Trump could have helped him win that war. Not just end the war, but win the war, I think. However, I think what you're seeing with Zelensky feeling like he's got the ability to just come to the United States during an election year, during an election season, and talk smack about Trump and Vance tells me that the prevailing sentiment in Ukraine is that Trump and Vance are not going to win. And so he's trying to ride the strong horse, right? It's kind of a cynical play, but it shows me that he believes that Trump can't win. And that's possibly a bad take on his part that he may come to regret in the future. But I think it was, no matter whether I think that we ought to be standing up for people who are getting attacked unjustly in Ukraine, okay, no matter what Zelensky just did in the United States was really bad. And he should not have done that. That was beyond the pale. And we would have, if we had done that in Ukraine, the Ukrainians would have been up in arms about it. That's terrible. Shouldn't have done it. And I think he may live to regret it. What was the root cause of the war in Ukraine? The root cause of the war in Ukraine had to do with natural gas, in my opinion, and electricity. Now, most people don't understand that. Again, we're kind of getting over to talk about Ukraine, but if that's what you guys want to talk about, I'll answer your questions about it. The Ukrainians have a large portion of the electrical generation capability for the Russian power grid, because it was built during the Soviet Union, and a lot of nuclear power plants were built in Ukraine because Russia didn't want them in Russia. And that has come back to bite them, because now that Ukraine is moving more toward the West, wanting to become more of a European country and not be under the thumb of Russia, they started talking about changing their electrical power grid over to the European grid, which would have taken far too much electricity away from the already fragile Russian power grid. And Russia was saying, don't do that. We're not going to allow that. And the Ukrainians took the Zaporizhia power plant off of the Russian power grid and moved it over to the European power grid 4 hours before Russia attacked. And that, I believe, is what precipitated the attack when it happened. All of this talk about Nazis, all this talk about that Ukraine was always part of Russia and there were all these Russians in Ukraine that were being persecuted and everything, that's all hogwash. None of that had anything to do with the real reason why Putin actually invaded. The other thing was that there's 39 trillion cubic meters of natural gas that had been discovered in the Donbas region since 2013. And the reason why Putin started annexing the Donbas was specifically so that the Ukrainians couldn't get that natural gas and compete with Russia for the European market, because they would have won. And so Russia lost the European market anyway, but they're like, if we can't have it, there's nobody going to have it. And the area that Russia has taken inside Ukraine almost exactly corresponds to the natural gas fields that were discovered there since 2013. So those are the reasons why I believe that Russia invaded. Lance asks, do you think Russia will target UK's nuclear power plants? No, I don't. Although they are definitely engaging in lots and lots of sabotage all across Europe. Russia is doing things right now in Europe that ought to be considered an act of war. ought to be the kind of thing that would make NATO say, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that all of this stuff that's happening around Europe, bad things that are happening, we know that this is Russia doing it, and that's an act of war, and we're going to war with Russia. I mean, I think they're just trying to pretend that it's not an act of war because they don't want to get into it directly with Russia. They would rather see Ukrainian men die to protect Europe rather than send European men to protect their own countries. A question, what will be Russia's attitude and response to the ground invasion in Lebanon? Well, Russia, we are pretty sure, has had troops in Lebanon advising Hezbollah. It would be very interesting if they do this ground invasion and they end up capturing some Russian Spetsnaz or Wagner forces or something like that. That would be very interesting and very embarrassing for Russia. So I would imagine that right now, all of the Russian advisors that they had in Lebanon to talk to Hezbollah are packing very rapidly and getting out of the country. That's my guess, okay? Let's see here. History of war against Israel. It's obvious not to mess with Israel. Yes, of course. Do you think Israel will ever attack Iran? They missed the chance in April. I think that they will attack Iran at some point with just aerial attacks. There's not going to be a ground war between Israel and Iran because of all the countries between those two. Those two countries can't get at each other on the ground. So the only thing they can do is fight in the cyber realm, the information realm, and the aerial realm with missiles and drones and things like that. So yes, you might see attacks at some point, directly kinetic attacks by Israel onto Iran, but they're trying to avoid it. And the United States is trying very hard to avoid it. Okay, let's see, other questions here. I'm scrolling up. Doesn't Israel need equipment from the U.S.? Well, they do, but they can prosecute this conflict without it if they have to. But the United States is not going to stop supporting Israel if they invade Lebanon. Lebanon is not like Gaza. They're going to have a much harder time, excoriating Israel on the public stage, on the world stage, if they invade Lebanon, because in Gaza, the people in Gaza have a very hard time going anywhere else. There's no escape for them. So Israel goes in and they're forcibly relocating people all around Gaza back and forth as they try to clear out the remnants of Hamas. In the case of Lebanon, it's different because, in the case of Lebanon, it's different because the Lebanese can leave. Lebanon is a much bigger country. They can go north. Israel's not going to take over all of Lebanon. They'll just take over the southern, most 10 miles or so. And so people there can go further north, or they can go to Syria, and they have been. So it's not the pressure cooker like Gaza is. And so I don't think the United States is going to stop supporting them. Thank you, Brandy, for the $10. That's really kind of you. Really appreciate those. You guys don't know how encouraging it is to see people say, hey, here's go get a cup of coffee. It was really nice of you when you do that. Trump knows Zelensky is a grifter. I don't know. I think Zelensky is a guy who's trying to save his country, and he's doing what he has to do to raise the money to do that. Zelensky, Ukraine definitely needs the support of the West in order to be able to win against a much larger opponent. To call him a grifter, I think is a little bit unfair. Yes, he's coming with his hand out to the United States. He's always asking for more. And, we get kind of fed up with that. I get it. We don't want to be spending money on this. But again, look at the deal that we're getting here. What Zelensky is saying, it's not like Zelensky's not offering anything in return. Okay? Think about it. Zelensky is saying Russia will be decimated to the point where they can no longer threaten the West. And our men and our women in Ukraine will do all the bleeding and dying to see that that happens. All we ask from the West is that you give us the tools to do it. Now, if it came down to it, and I had to choose between sending American tax dollars to Ukraine to accomplish that goal, I think that's a worthy goal because Russia was an actual threat to the West. If it came down to sending American tax dollars or sending my son, I'd say I'd prefer the tax dollars. And so I think that to call Zelensky a grifter is a little disingenuous because Zelensky is coming and he's saying, look, we are holding up our end of the bargain here. We've lost almost 100,000 men in this war. That's twice as much as the United States lost in Vietnam almost. Okay? So it's not like they're not offering anything in return. They're just saying, hey, if you don't want the $200 billion you've already spent in Ukraine to end up being wasted, then you need to give us enough so that we can actually end this thing rather than just keep it going forever. Because otherwise, if Ukraine loses, then every penny that the United States and Europe has spent trying to decimate Russia will have been somewhat wasted. Okay? So there you go. Please pray for Israel. We do pray for Israel quite a bit. Yes, exactly. Everyone forgets how many American lives were lost fighting Russian proxies. So I saw news that Lebanese army fired at Hezbollah inside Lebanon. This means Lebanese military is obviously not with Hezbollah. And will Hezbollah not easily defeat the Lebanese army? Hezbollah could defeat the Lebanese army. That's true. Hezbollah is the largest non-state military actor on earth. Also the largest transnational criminal organization on earth. And so they need to be taken down. No question. They need to be, decimated. Now, if I have not seen any news. Now, you might have seen something I didn't. And if you saw news about this, please send it to me. Send me a link to my email, hotzoneholton@gmail.com. I'd like to see any news that you have about the Lebanese army actually engaging in a firefight with Hezbollah. I have not seen that. But if that is the case, then the question is, what does that tell us? And what it tells me is Lebanon is looking at this and saying, we don't want to be seen as being on the side of Hezbollah because if we are, then we might lose that $300 million a year in military hardware that we're getting from the United States. Okay? Okay, so hopefully that answered that question. Tacos. Yes, I want some tacos. Thank you, One Tired Mama. Very kind of you. You don't need to do that. We're trying to send money to you. Don't send money back to me. We just sent you some more the other day. Zelensky can stay in office legally according to their laws, just like Netanyahu can. Yeah, he's not there illegally. Some people said that Zelensky canceled the elections and canceled the Constitution. No, the Constitution in Ukraine specifically says that you cannot hold elections during a time of war because there are a lot of people that are in occupied areas who are Ukrainian who wouldn't be able to vote. And so it wouldn't be a legit vote if those people can't vote. There are also a bunch of troops that are engaged in the fighting that would have a very hard time getting to the polls as well. And so that's why they have postponed the elections for a couple of years in Ukraine, because the Constitution of Ukraine specifically says they have to. That's why. Okay, me and the missus need a coffee. No, we don't need coffee. We need tacos. And they don't have tacos here in Armenia, and that makes me very sad. Okay, so how long have we been going on this thing anyway? We're coming up on an hour? Yeah, we are. Okay, well, we got 3,000 people online. Please hit the like button. I only see 1,294 likes. Let this be your reminder. I'll just wait for just a second. Do you see the cat? Oh yeah, there's Freya watching me from the window. Freya has been plotting my demise ever since I got here. Please go hit that like button and share this podcast because it really does help. And again, we have only you to thank for the growth that we've seen on this channel since the war started in Israel. And we're getting to the point where you guys will be able to tell me where I need to go next, and I'll go because your likes and your subscriptions and going over to chuckholton.com and joining up over there, it actually makes a big difference. It helps a lot. So please keep that up. And if you didn't see it, go look at the speech, the presidential speech that I put up, the speech I would give if I was the president of the United States, which, believe me, a lot of people have said, yes, why don't you run for president? And my answer is because I couldn't trust the Secret Service to protect me from my wife. There's no way she would let me run for president. That's not going to happen. And I got way too many skeletons. Too many old girlfriends that would come forward. That'd be bad. Okay, so we're going to end it here, and I'm going to pray specifically for the people who are in the path of Hurricane, is it Helene? Is that it? Well, God knows. Let's pray. Lord God, we just pray right now that you would put your hand of protection over Florida and Georgia and all the states that are in the path of this hurricane. I've ridden out so many hurricanes in Florida, I can't even count. And I know that the people there just have to deal with this on a yearly basis. And very often, you can so clearly see where you have come in, Lord, and have protected people, have protected their property. And so I pray that you would do that again now, that people would cry out to you and that they would find you and that you would make yourself known to them by the way that you save them. Lord, I pray that that people would see that salvation and they would want it. They would want to get to know you better, that as they cry out to you, that they would get to know your love and your grace and your mercy. So we pray also for Israel. We pray that you would continue to protect them. We've seen your miraculous protection over them so many times in this conflict, and we just thank you for that. We praise you, Lord. And we ask for peace in Jerusalem. We ask for peace for the Christians in northern Israel and in southern Lebanon. We pray for the peace in the whole region, Lord. There are so many people that are suffering. And so we pray that you would just bring an end to this conflict. We pray for the hostages that are still being held, that you would miraculously bring them out alive, Lord, and that people would not be able to attribute it to anything else, that they would just look at it and say that has to be a miracle. You would give wisdom and discernment to the leadership of the IDF and the Israeli people, and to our own leaders as well, around the world. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, thank you for watching, folks. God bless you. I'm going to go get some tacos if I can get somebody to make me some. Hint, hint, honey, tacos would be great. Can we make tacos? I don't know if she's, maybe not, but okay. I don't know if I'll be able to go live tomorrow night because I've got to go get on an airplane, but if I can make it, I will. So stay tuned. Make sure you go watch the how to survive the post-election. We should maybe call this election apocalypse or something. How to survive the election apocalypse. I just thought of that. That's great. We're going to make this into a series. And again, if you are subscribed over at chuckholton.com, you can get access to the printed booklet that goes along with the live that I did. So make sure you go over there and sign up as well. All right. God bless you. We'll see you next time.